Scary Movie has recently made its long-awaited return after a near 13 years on hiatus. A lot of people have said that the parody spoof genre is dead. It is not coming back, it will not return, or that these films were always too lowbrow, could never receive critical praise. I think that was vastly proven wrong last year by one of my favorite films, the reboot of the much acclaimed Naked Gun, easily in my top five of the previous year. So I don't think it was ever necessarily that the genre was doomed. I think it's that they became oversaturated and many were being pumped out in a very low quality, haphazard fashion, like releasing 10 Guitar Hero games back to back. An overabundance of parody killed the appetite that people had for it. And now that we've had such a drought of parody and spoof films, I think the time is amped for those to start coming back. So to prepare for the new Scary Movie, I ended up watching all of the previous five and I saw the new one in theaters. And today I'm going to rank them. I'm going to go through every single one. I do enjoy these a lot. Comedy is my favorite genre. I have seen the majority of the films that these films are riffing on. I am very into horror as well. And these are primarily a spoof of the Scream franchise, particularly in the first one and the newest one. Scream is my all-time favorite horror franchise, so it's really interesting to see what they pick and choose to make fun of from it. In last place, I have Scary Movie 4. This is going to be a controversial take because I know not a consensus, but the consensus is that Scary Movie 5 is by far the worst in the franchise, and that it's not even up for debate. Fifth is the worst one. I watched 4 and 5 back to back, and I have to disagree with that take. Five was funnier to me in a lot of ways. I understand there's a lot of drama with how the film was made. A lot of it's dubbed badly. A lot of it's incoherent. A lot of the cast did not return. Regardless, ignoring all of that, I like it much more than this. Well, Scary Movie 4 is more definitively part of the franchise as it has many of these same casts and returning characters from other entries. This film is bogged down by fatigue. The reset that we get in 5 was sorely needed, to be honest, because this film, while is still enjoyable and I liked it overall, is by far the least funny. You can feel in this film that this is a franchise running on fumes. This film opens with a scene between Shaq and Dr. Phil. It's a parody of the Saw scenes. I can't say it's a resounding success as a scene, but I do like the concept enough. I'm a big fan of the Saw films. Even the ones I don't like are so over the top and melodramatic. It's really the soap opera of the horror genre. But unfortunately, I feel like a lot of the parody ideas in this film aren't really jokes. They're more just references to the movies. And when they are jokes, they often don't land. A significant chunk of this film is parodying War of the Worlds, which is arguably horror, but I would say it's more decidedly sci-fi. Probably my favorite scene in this is near the opening of the film, the one we get with Charlie Sheen. Anna Faris and Regina Hall give good performances like they do in all of the films, but the material they have to work with here is just not that great. Well, this film might be considered more coherent than Five in some ways, more in line with the rest of the franchise. I just cannot bring myself to call this a better film than Five because the fact of the matter is Five is funnier. In fifth place, I have Scary Movie 5. This one is one of the most hated films of all time. If you go and look on Letterboxd, if you go look anywhere, you will see people telling you not to watch this, that it's garbage, that it's a horrible spoof film. Uh, I would agree it's not the best, but I largely enjoyed my time with it. I largely enjoyed my time with all of these films. I don't necessarily dislike any of them. I would put quite a few on the weaker end. Much of the hate for this film, though, stems from the fact that the original cast is abandoned. Charlie Sheen returns, but Anna Faris, Regina Hall, and the Wayans brothers are nowhere to be found. This actually has my favorite opening scene out of the entire franchise and possibly my favorite joke in the entire franchise, which I know is a hot take. The film opens with a riff on Paranormal Activity in which Charlie Sheen and Lindsay Lohan end up making a kind of sex tape riffing on Paranormal Activity. It goes insanely off the walls and grabbed me right from the start. Snoop Dogg and Mac Miller also cameo in this, which is really weird to see, but they're at least mildly entertaining. I would not call them my favorite parts, but I think Mac Miller actually outdoes Snoop Dogg a little bit here in terms of his performance. My favorite joke in this involves a scene of two women having implied sex. Obviously, there's things in lots of movies where we cut away as soon as sex is implied, and you see some kind of imagery that is suggestive, such as a train going into a tunnel. This has a brilliant riff on this idea in which, after we learn that two women are about to have sex, we see various ways that it is implied they are scissoring with literal scissors, with hot dog buns rubbing against each other, with two tacos grating against each other. And my personal favorite, you see an empty train tunnel riffing on that idea of a train scene I've mentioned numerous times. You hear the music build up, and then another model train tunnel crashes into it. I almost wanted to pause and rewind that scene because it was so visually brilliant. I also think this actually has the best performances from children in the franchise. In the other films, I would call the child actors a little bit weaker, other than maybe three. Another reason this film is hated is because it also strays quite far from its horror roots. Much of it is parodying Black Swan or the Rise of the Planet of the Apes trilogy. I like both of those movies, so I was fine seeing a parody of them, but I can understand people who wanted this to remain as a pure horror spoof franchise. Overall, though, I think 5 is vastly overhated, and personally, I don't even consider it the worst in the franchise. I can't wave around a DVD for Scary Movie 6 because there is no DVD yet. I saw it in theaters. After seeing it, I was a bit surprised by the critical reception this got. I do think it is a far, far step below the Naked Gun reboot we got last year. It is nowhere near on the same caliber of inventiveness or hilarity. However, this is still a pretty entertaining time. One thing I would like to particularly praise this film for is, like the first film, it anchors itself strongly around a primary film to parody. There is a wide range of films that are covered, but our story is built around Scream 5. If you have not seen Scream 5, I would highly suggest you watch that before this because it will spoil it near entirely. But in that anchoring, it allows the film to actually have somewhat of a coherent plot. Those aren't essentially necessary for these films. I actually like the sketch-based nature of Scary Movie 5, for example, but it allows you to somewhat root for these characters and believe them in a way, building an actual logic of the world that when that logic is now undermined, it elevates the comedy because there are actual stakes and something to care about. I've seen some people complaining that they feel this film has certain political leanings. I did not really get that from the movie. I feel the comedy that is present is fairly well balanced. I will say the nature of the marketing implied it would be something that this film is not. The kind of offensive comedy that is suggested by the trailers in that Eminem promo song don't really accurately capture this. I mean, it is an R-rated raunchy film, but I would say most of the jokes in this are highly unlikely to upset uh, anyone, especially the loudest voices online. If anything, I actually think this film could have been more offensive, and it may have been better for it. Because we have had such a long gap between this film and 5, there's plenty of material for them to speed run through. We get references to The Substance, we get references to Final Destination, we get references to I Know What You Did Last Summer, we get references to Weapons, we get references to Sinners, we even get references to Michael and K-pop Demon Hunters. There is no shortage of ideas here, and many of them are sped through quite quickly, which keeps the film entertaining. There are also two post-credit scenes, one parodying Nosferatu and one continuing a parody of Longlegs that starts off earlier in the film. I do think the Wayans brothers have a stronger appreciation of the horror genre that allows them to parody it a little bit better than we see in the Zucker films, and that's largely why I have this one rated higher than 4 and 5. In third place, I have Scary Movie 3, the first of the David Zucker films. David Zucker is responsible for the Naked Gun franchise, for Airplane, a lot of the greatest spoof franchises. I will say Scary Movie is not his, and you can tell that. The Wayans brothers have a stronger appreciation of horror, they have a stronger understanding of these characters, and they have a better flair for absurd visual storytelling. I think the highlights of these Scary Movie films are when they use the visual medium to have these almost kind of cartoony gags that don't even feel possible in live action, and yet they occur here. That being said, Scary Movie 3 is still a good entry in its own right. I have it on the top half of the franchise. And I like the appearance of Leslie Nelson from The Naked Gun. I think he's a great performer, one of the best deadpan actors we've ever had. Charlie Sheen makes his appearance here. Unfortunately, this is the first one in which the Wayans brothers are absent, but Anna Faris and Regina Hall both reappear, which helps this franchise maintain a little bit of continuity. One thing that I didn't mention in my 6 review is that a lot of 6 is a meta commentary of the franchise, so I would highly suggest watching all of these before you go see the new one. 3 is where the franchise really starts to move away from its horror roots. We are parodying Aliens, which are kind of horror, but we're also parodying films like 8 Mile, which has absolutely nothing to do with horror. That being said, I do enjoy this quite a bit. In particular, I think the kid that is in this film really carries it. The kid in this who's parodying the film Sixth Sense comes off really strong. Well, this film is funny. It's clearly a step down. It becomes a bit of a cameo fest, and it's nowhere near the hilarity of the first 2. I don't think the franchise has ever reached those heights again, but I'm hopeful that one day it may if it continues. The tagline for this says, "Great trilogies come in threes." In reality, that's rarely true, and it's also not true here. But I guess you could say that kind of plays into it. In second place, I have Scary Movie 2. I think this is a true step up from 3. However, it's definitely a step down from the first film. I will say the opening scene did not work very well for me. Scary Movie 2, while not having a true anchor film, centers clearly on the idea of haunted house movies. It very much picks a lane. It did take a while for this to get going, and I think part of that is it tries to connect itself to the first one in a way that doesn't necessarily make sense. I don't think that the connective tissue is necessarily necessary here, considering that some of our main cast have died off and just show up again. However, once this plot gets going, it is very funny. There is one scene involving a fight with a cat. The cat is a puppet of a kind, and I was uproariously laughing. I was about to fall off my couch from how hard I was laughing at that particular scene. That is easily my second favorite scene in the whole franchise. Anna Faris continues her parody of Sidney Prescott. In some ways, this is a parody of Scream 2 as well. And like Sidney Prescott in Scream 2, she goes off to college before ultimately ending up at this haunted house. This is also parodying things like The Exorcist or Silence of the Lambs. Silence of the Lambs leads to a continuing gag that I find particularly funny, though some people might be grossed out by. Ray gets a lot of screen time in this. He is my personal favorite character in the franchise, especially in 1 and 2. He was still my favorite in Scream 6, but I do think it's a bit of a step down there. There were some scenes in this film in which he had me audibly laughing numerous times. The end of this goes rather off the walls, but I do like 1 and 6, this actually feels like a story, something that 3, 4, and 5 do not necessarily do that well. And in first place, I have Scary Movie. This has so many things going for it. It's one of the best spoof films I've ever seen. This is the first in the franchise, and it's spoofing one of the best horror films of all time, the 1996 Scream. And because it anchors itself on a film which is already so strong, it is able to leverage its plot around it while simultaneously undermining it in really interesting and innovative ways. It's a little bizarre because Scream is already somewhat of a meta commentary satire on the horror genre, and this is a parody of that meta commentary film. I just noticed on the DVD it says "No Mercy, No Shame, No Sequel." Obviously, that did not hold true. Somewhat of a running through line in horror films. Notice how many are called the final chapter and aren't. This is the only entry in the franchise that I had seen as a kid. I watched this before the original Scream, but I had forgotten enough about it that it never spoiled it for me. I will say I get the film a lot more now that I'm older and can understand the jokes and have also seen the films that it's riffing on. We also get a lot of parody for I Know What You Did Last Summer, another film written by Kevin Williamson, one that I don't particularly like anywhere near as much as Scream, but was certainly influential at its time. This has my second favorite opening scene after the Charlie Sheen one I talked about earlier, which is a parody of Scream's opening scene. And every 3 seconds, we're getting another riff on horror tropes. There are plenty of visual gags. It's not just told through the dialogue. There's actually a lot of effort put into the set designs and props to tell these jokes visually. We see things that just cannot happen It is very raunchy. If that's something you're offended by, you probably wouldn't like this. But it goes more and more off the rails and it just keeps getting more bizarre. This film will spoil Scream's twist if you've never seen the original film, so I would recommend checking out that first. However, this film has twists of its own which take things even further. Scary Movie is not just a parody film, it's not just a retelling of Scream, it's a memorable film in its own right. Unlike most of these, which I just watched and have already forgotten a lot of, I can remember almost everything that happened in this. There's very little fat on it, and it remains to this day one of the best spoofs that I've seen. I gave Scary Movie a 5 out of 6. That's my ranking of the Scary Movie franchise. Feel free to let me know what your ranking is in the comments below. I would love to read them. Tell me that I'm wrong for not having 5 on last, I'm sure. And what did you think of the new film? Have you seen it? And if this franchise continues, what kind of horror films would you like to have it see cover in the future? As broad as the references are in 6, there's quite a lot that it hasn't covered.